that you have allowed us to live. We are also grateful for the amenities provided to sustain our lives. We're so thankful to your Son Jesus, who is our advocate, our friend, our mediator. And as such, we come before you, Lord Jesus, for divine intervention in this session as we're about to discuss matters of trade. Would you guide us in all of our discussions, in our deliberation at the end of the day, that we find solutions and resolution that will enhance the quality of life for all of our people. We give thanks for successful endeavor. In your precious name, amen.
If you can just remain standing, we will play the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, followed by the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago. Remain standing, please, for the anthem of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you. Apologies for the little improvisation. But technology, yes, technology intervened. Thank you. You may be seated. Yes, that's the YouTube still running in the background, Janelle. So we had a little improvisation. But thank you very much, everybody. I have a long protocol list here. First of all, let me recognize the Honorable Camilo Gonçalves, Finance Minister of Finance, Economic Planning, and Information Technology. Mrs. Okolo John Patrick, she's our Director of Trade in the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and Consumer Affairs. Mr. Ezra Ledger, Executive Director, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Bureau of Standards. We have in the audience Mr. Romel Currency, who is our Trade Officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, and Consumer Affairs. Soon to arrive would be Mrs. Nadine Juliarat, Director of Export Promotion and Marketing, Invest SVG. And from down south, we have Dr. Mahindra Ramdeen. Did I pronounce your name properly, Doc? Yes. And he is the CEO of Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. We have a director of TTMA in the audience as well, Mr. Jonathan Garcia. We are pleased to acknowledge Mrs. Suzanne Singh Seratan, and I got your name right today, okay? And she's the Director of Trade Facilitation in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Trinidad and Tobago. My team from the Chamber of Industry and Commerce who work in the Secretariat and have worked very hard to pull this event off. I also want to recognize the members of the TTMA Secretariat, Janelle and Shannon, to be precise, and other invited guests, members of the media, other members of the public sector. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving us your attention and your time in what will be a very short, to the point, doing business forum. I am tasked to just give another word of welcome. I've been doing that since Sunday night, because I've been out to the airport to meet the contingent. They came in 2 or 3 tranches. And it is a pleasure to welcome, on behalf of Chamber of Industry and Commerce in St. Vincent, and if I can be so presumptuous, to take on the responsibility of welcoming you to St. Vincent on behalf of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is a pleasure to see you here. I know you planned to be in St. Vincent around this time, our Independence Week, hoping that we were going to have everything Vinci Expo. Circumstances overtook us. We had, as you know, a very devastating storm which affected the Southern Grenadines, but it really did distract us and deviated a lot of the resources that would normally go into hosting, not just financial, but other assets that would normally go into hosting the Everything Vinci Expo. So I'm inviting you to look at this space next year for the same expo. It will be on. It is, to me, some hard work put in over a short period of time. Janelle and Shanna, we started having these conversations about 8 weeks ago, less than that. And the chamber, that is, and we were told, well, okay, we have approximately 20 businesses coming from Trinidad across the sectors. They're members of the Manufacturers Association. They're coming to look for new market opportunities, to meet with businesses on the ground, to develop relationships, synergies that will enable that. And this is all being underpinned and facilitated by the CSME. And that's the part, and I think the minister will speak more to that than the Director of Trade. That's the part that is exciting about this visit, because we have opportunities right in the CMSE region that I believe we overlook a lot of the times. I think because we over the years have been programmed to think of products from outside the region as being desirable to have, and not understanding that our own productive sector within the CARICOM region are rapidly increasing their capacity to produce alternative products, quality-wise and definitely price competitive. Yesterday and part of today saw about 50 businesses from St. Vincent and the Grenadines come to have one-on-one meetings with the 21 businesses that were represented from the TTMA. And from my feedback, both on the St. Vincent side and on the Trinidad side, the meetings were very fruitful. So I'm very happy about that. And I think that is mission accomplished. I know obviously there are follow-ups to be had. And what was interesting is that even some businesses that were not here had emissaries, you know, in the form of people who were here saying, oh, I have a contact for such and such. And so that's how a network grows. And Trinidad is a traditional trading partner of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're embedded in your history, and you're embedded in ours. Certainly for trade. I was saying to your director yesterday that goats, live goats, used to go down to Trinidad on boats. Live goats, live animals. And we used to call them goat boats. See, that's my age. I don't even think the minister is aware of that. He's read it somewhere, but I don't know if he lived it. But that just shows you how far back our trading ties go. And it is important that we keep, because St. Vincent has quite a diaspora in Trinidad. There are first, second, and third generation Vincentians in Trinidad. And it's important that we keep those ties. Human ties and trade ties is very important for a variety of reasons. Anyway, so let me not ramble on. I want to get rolling with the list of speakers who will address specific areas. We have 3 presentations as well, which is the meat of the Doing Business seminar, really. And I'll introduce them as they come up. But before we get into those presentations, I would like to invite, I don't have the order here, though. I just have the protocol list. So the first person, I think, was Miss, yes, the CEO of TTMA.
Well, I'm a firm believer that we need to be concise and precise and manage our time. So I'm not going to go through this very long protocol list, except to say, Minister, it's a distinct pleasure to have you join us here this evening. We know the value of your time and your commitment and your dedication to the work that you do. To leave Cabinet and come here and be with us is indicative that you value what we're trying to do here. The MC spoke about the planning from the embryonic stages of bringing this trade mission to St. Vincent, and he was absolutely right. We were trying to twin it with everything Vinci. And the reason for that, we didn't see it primarily as a mission where we come and try to sell stuff alone. We wanted to participate in everything Vinci because we have a significant amount of our manufacturers also trying to source material. The way the world is going, the globalization environment that we're operating in, we need to diversify our portfolio in terms of how we source items. When we hear the heads of government and the likes of the minister and his cabinet colleagues and committees at the CARICOM level talking about 25 and 25 and feeding ourselves, we need to look within. The geographical dispensation that we live in now speaks to the fact that we cannot continue to rest all our eggs in one basket. We really and truly need to diversify our portfolio in terms of sourcing and selling and buying products, and why not look within ourselves? the CARICOM region of 7 million people. If we work together really hard, there's no reason why we can't be among the best producing, selling, buying nations for ourselves. There are many things we can buy. And Minister, as I have you here, we need to resolve some of the matters that is curtailing the trade at the CARICOM level. All these sanitary and phytosanitary and the non-tariff barriers that are created. We in the business community, what we really want to do is to operate in an environment that is transparent and predictable. We have among us here, we had to really and truly change around the model of this trade mission when everything Vinci was canceled. But rest assured, Chairman, that everything Vinci is on our calendar. We were here last year. Shana was actually here last year. I don't know if you know that. Shana was actually here, and the genesis of this thing started then. So we will be looking at everything Vinci again next year. But as I said, we revisit the model, and we have 21 odd companies, and they range from the food and beverage, printing and packaging, alcohol, beverages, snacks, chemical, a wide range of persons here. And as the MC said, we had some very productive meetings. On the average, each one of these companies had at minimum 5 meetings. Probably some of them had up to 10 meetings. We have people from the logistic companies as well here. So it's not just we're trying to create the trade, but we also bring in people who could facilitate the process as well. And apart from those 21 companies, we also had 3 different entities: TTMA, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the Exim Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, who are here as well. So in total, we had approximately 30 odd companies. I'm saying all that to say is that Trinidad and Tobago and the TTMA, we were very desirous of promoting CARICOM, promoting regional trade, and we want to work with everyone who's involved to ensure that we move this trajectory in the right direction where all our countries, all our peoples will benefit from mutual trade among ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rolling right along, we invite Mrs. Suzanne, I have to get your name right, Singh Sarata. She's the Director of Trade Facilitation. She's going to address us.
Since I'm a short person. Thank you. You want me to just hold that? Great. The Honorable Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Finance, Economic Planning, and Information Technology. Mrs. Okolo John Patrick, Director of Trade, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade and Consumer Affairs. Mr. Tony Regisford, Executive Director, Chamber of Commerce St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Dr. Mahindra Ramdi, CEO TTMA, representative from the Bureau of Standards, Customs Division and Invest St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Participants of the Trade Mission, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me just hold it. Right. Okay, at the outset, I extend warm greetings to all in attendance today on behalf of Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, TNT, who is unable to join us. Nonetheless, the Honorable Minister is confident that this mission will be successful and will yield significant benefits for all parties. That being said, it is my pleasure to speak on doing business in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would like to emphasize that this trade mission represents a significant step towards enhancing the relationship between our 2 countries, since it facilitates discussion on shared priorities concerning trade and investment. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2 countries share a strong history of trade relations, characterized by our status as sister countries within CARICOM and through the CSME. Our geographical proximity as the southernmost islands in the Caribbean basin, coupled with our shared historical and cultural experiences, further strengthens this bond. Formal diplomatic ties were established in 1979, and through our mutual membership in CARICOM, the Commonwealth of Nations, the Organization of American States, and the Association of Caribbean States, we have consistently supported one another in advocating for key issues affecting us as small island developing states. This relationship transcends not just mere trade in goods and services, it also includes collaborative initiatives in education and healthcare, and most importantly, mutual support during times of need. In addition to the aforementioned, there are also commonalities that exist between our countries in terms of our national development strategies, which both include a focus on building global competitiveness and providing support to local companies. Businesses and innovators can safely create ideas, work hard to turn those ideas into reality, and our governments, through the prioritization of these pillars, have committed to secure the interests of these businesses, both domestically and internationally. I say this to demonstrate that not only do our countries have long-standing relations, but we have mutual interests in the realm of trade and investment. In this context, the opportunities for collaboration are vast, fostering enhanced trade facilitation and encouraging business-to-business partnership between our private sectors. In bringing it back to today's seminar, the primary objective of this week's trade mission is to offer exporters from Trinidad and Tobago valuable networking opportunities, facilitate the exchange of market information, and enable meetings with potential buyers. As such, attaining positive outcome during this week and for the weeks to follow will go far in building economic sustainability, diversification of economies, and harness our collective abilities to effectively trade our way to greater prosperity and security. Having discussed the relationship between our countries and the rationale for this trade mission, I will now shift my focus to the trade data. During the period 2019 to 2023, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been Trinidad and Tobago's 7th largest export market and 8th largest source of imports in CARICOM, averaging TT 339 million in exports and TT 12 million in imports annually. Export consisted of non-energy products such as mineral water, cereal, steel bars and rods, sweet biscuit and juices, as well as energy products such as liquefied propane. Trinidad and Tobago import from SVG during the same period consisted of non-energy products such as edibles, dasheen, ginger, plantain, bananas, and nutmeg. At first glance, it is evident that trade between our nation is essential as a variety of exported and imported products reflect our respective sectors. Trinidad and Tobago specializes in manufactured products and oil and gas products, while SVG excels in agricultural produce. It would be remiss of me to not also highlight that as St. Vincent and the Grenadines' economy is dominated by tourism, the opportunity for products from Trinidad and Tobago to enter your market also potentially exposes our products to thousands of tourists. Furthermore, the relationship established between our corporate sectors through trade missions such as this one facilitate connections between the manufacturing sectors of both countries. This interaction lays the groundwork for potential future collaboration. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to take full advantage of the activities taking place during this Doing Business seminar. Take the opportunity to absorb valuable insights from the presenters and experts in attendance and make the most of the time, of the remaining time that you all have for B2B meetings. As colleagues within CARICOM, let us take advantage of the opportunities for enhancing trade, which will ultimately pave the way for a prosperous future, both domestically and regionally. I thank you all.
Thank you, and we will now invite our Director of Trade, Mrs. Okolo John Patrick to address us.
Thank you.
Honorable Camilo Gonsalves, Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Information Technology, Mr. Anthony Rettersford, Executive Director of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Ezra Leisure, Executive Director of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Bureau of Standards, Mrs. Nadine Julerat, Director of Export Promotion and Marketing, Invest SVG, Mr. Romel Currency, Trade Officer 2, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade and Consumer Affairs, Dr. Mahendra Ramdeen, I hope I got that right, CEO, Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, Mr. Jonathan Gracia, the Director of the TTMA, Mrs. Susan Singh Seratan, Director of Trade Facilitation, Ministry of Trade and Industry in Trinidad and Tobago, other members of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Chamber of Industry and Commerce, senior public servant, representative of the private sector, representative of the media, specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. A special welcome to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A special welcome to those who are coming here for the first time. Welcome to the Gem of the Antilles. I am pleased to address you in this business forum today, organized by the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Chamber of Industry and Commerce in collaboration with Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. This business forum is very important and timely. St. Vincent and the Grenadines private and public officials welcome the opportunity to engage with Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association on trade and investment opportunities. St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Tobago are members of CARICOM and the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. The objectives of the CSME are to promote economic integration and cooperation among its members, to ensure that the benefits of integration are equitably shared, and to coordinate foreign policy. It is therefore important that the private sector take full advantage of the opportunities under the CSME. Initiatives like this is a testimony of the advancement of the CSME objectives in the region. In 2022, St. Vincent and the Grenadines' total value of imports from Trinidad and Tobago was approximately 102 million EC dollars, and total export was 7,097,000 EC dollars, representing 8.57% of total imports and 6.68% of total export. Within CARICOM, Trinidad and Tobago maintained over 55% of the market share of St. Vincent and the Grenadines imports. Additionally, in 2023, St. Vincent and the Grenadines' value of imports from Trinidad and Tobago was approximately 108 million EC dollars, with total exports of 5,867,000 EC dollars, representing 8.81% of total imports and 6.19% of total exports. Trinidad and Tobago is a significant trading partner for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, particularly in the agriculture sector. Trinidad and Tobago is among the top 5 export markets for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our market imports a wide range of agricultural produce such as sweet potatoes, dasheen, edos, yam, plantains, breadfruit, coconuts, etc. However, most recently, the agriculture sector of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been greatly affected by the passing of Hurricane Beryl and in 2021 by the volcanic eruption. These natural phenomena presents the country with significant challenges. However, the Ministry of Agriculture has been working tirelessly with the farmers to enhance production. Efforts to explore ways to subsidize the agriculture exports, diverse the product offering, and strengthening market presence in Trinidad and Tobago are presently undergoing. Additionally, the steady rise in the aerated beverages export points to a potential growth area for non-agricultural goods. I would also like to point that the aerated beverages are also on the list of Article 164 products. In terms of doing business in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we pride ourselves as being facilitative and region-focused. As we seek to continually improve and become more trade facilitative, I am pleased to inform you that St. Vincent and the Grenadines modern port is expected to be completed in 2025. The modern port will enhance the competitiveness of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in this modern era and enhance trade flows in our region, in our regional partners. Additionally, the Vincentian Single Window for Trade Facilitation, VSWIFT, was launched in June this year. This revolutionary initiative will significantly transform how we conduct trade in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. VSWIFT will provide a one-stop shop for all trade-related documentation and processes. It will eliminate the need for multiple submissions across different government agencies, saving time, reducing costs, and improving overall trade efficiency. This project is expected to be completed in 2026. Opportunities also exist in the agro-tourism sector. Trade initiatives such as farm tours, food festivals, farm-to-table culinary experiences are areas that we can explore. This blend of trade and tourism could foster sustainable economic growth and enhance St. Vincent and the Grenadines' market presence. I am certain with these initiatives, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Tobago and the region by extension can achieve mutual benefits. As I conclude, I want to recall the national consultation on the implementation of CSME held in June of this year. The central theme that came out from all engagement during the visit of the CARICOM Secretariat was the difficulties being experienced in the exchange of regional currency. It was shared that this remained problematic for traders who export to countries with different currencies within the region. It is therefore important that we work closely together to address these challenges. Yesterday, my department had the pleasure of meeting and engaging with the Director of Trade Facilitation in the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Trinidad and Tobago. We look forward to continue discussions as we seek to enhance potential business opportunities and create networks of buyers, agents, suppliers, and key government contacts between the two countries. With these brief remarks, I would like to wish you a very productive mission. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, and Consumer Affairs is available and committed to working with you to foster bilateral trade between Trinidad and Tobago and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Mrs. John Patrick. Mrs. John Patrick spoke about the project, the port project, the modern port project that we expect to be operational next year. And having spoken about that, I just wanted to mention that in the room, we have the CEO of the Argyle International Airport, which was also, just like the port project, a significant transformational project that will facilitate trade and tourism, etc. As we move along, we tend to take these things for granted, but 7 years ago is not a long time, and we still have to remember that. And incidentally, CAL, Caribbean Airlines, I think, Josette, you could correct me if I'm wrong, was the first airline flying out of Argyle International Airport on an international route. I think I'm correct with that. First airline that came to service the New York St. Vincent route. So again, Trinidad featured very much. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing the Minister of Finance, Economic Planning, and Information Technology, Honorable Camilo Gonçalves. He is a friend, I would say, of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Chamber of Industry and Commerce, notwithstanding that under his portfolio, he also looks at investment and private sector related matters. I think we have a very good relationship, the Chamber and his ministries. There's an open door policy that is practiced, and there are some planned and formal engagements from time to time. So it is really a pleasure that he has agreed to come out of cabinet meeting today to be with us, to give us some brief remarks. So, Honorable Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I also don't want to recite the entire protocol list, but I would like to especially recognize our friends from Trinidad and Tobago. I think the first thing the TTMA can do is whoever sells microphone stands I think we have a trade we can do there, initial trade. One of the disadvantages of coming after business people, when politicians come after business people, we always sound long-winded because business people get to the point. And I'm going to try to do the same thing because much of what I plan to say has been said and said very well by other members of the panel. I want to apologize to you for the absence of Everything Vinci this year. But while you may not see it from driving between the airport and the hotel, and I don't know exactly where you've been so far, Hurricane Beryl was devastating to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And if we use TT dollars, the damage estimates, this is not loss and damage, this is just damage. The damage to St. Vincent and the Grenadines is over now 2 billion TT dollars. And that damage was as of July. And once we were hit by the hurricane, we had some very difficult decisions to make about how we would prioritize our resources. And we thought that it would not be appropriate to have the expo at this particular time. So many of our own businesses were damaged. And of course, a lot of the manpower that is involved in hosting an event like that was better deployed in emergency response. So I want to apologize for the absence of Everything this year, and at the same time, promise you that it'll be back bigger and better next year. And to thank you for coming in spite of the fact that the Everything Vinci Expo was cancelled, was put off this year. I'm also happy to hear that there were so many successful business interactions between and among your 21 businesses and the businesses that are here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I start by talking about a hurricane, which was just a few months ago. And Okolo spoke about a volcano. And so the first thing that we have to reassure and remind everybody is that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is open for business. And that the recent disasters were setbacks, to be sure, but have not set back some very important points about St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That we have a growing and consistently growing economy, that we incentivize regional trade, and that we have an expanding middle class that is eager to engage in commerce at various levels with businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. You are here on our Independence Weekend, and our Independence Day is on Sunday. But we know that in the context of small island developing states like ours, we celebrate independence, but we recognize interdependence, and that there's a great need for the small island states of the Caribbean to forge linkages with one another and to form trade linkages, in addition to people and all the rest of it, to ensure not only our own development and growth and prosperity, but to ensure the unity of what we're trying to create within our Caribbean civilization. And as we approach this Independence Day, one of the independent decisions we want to do is strengthen our trading relations with our brothers and sisters in Trinidad and Tobago. And we believe that recent history has taught us the importance of having these relations, and it was mentioned earlier as well, that the connections, the trade connections within the region have proven to be in recent times more resilient than some of the trading arrangements further afield. COVID taught us a lot about the vulnerability of our supply chains and the challenges of logistics. And it forces countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which import a lot of goods, to wonder why we're buying X or Y from Miami or China when it's available in Trinidad and Tobago, and where it can be shipped more readily, more affordably, and with better spillover impacts on both of our economies if we do greater trade with Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll come back to that point. And in many instances, because of existing treaty arrangements within CARICOM, trading in goods between our countries is oftentimes cheaper than it is trading with countries further afield, but we don't take advantage of some of the opportunities that we have. Now, so we feel that from a business perspective, from a Caribbean perspective, from an ideological perspective, there are all reasons why we should be doing even greater trade with Trinidad and Tobago, both export and import. And unfortunately, fortunately for you guys, but this is a more of an import conversation from the perspective of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But hopefully when you come back next year for Everything Vinci, we'll be talking more about trade both ways. Trinidad and Tobago has long been our most active trading partner in the Caribbean. And Okolo gave you some of that data. But it's more than that. Trinidad and Tobago is the second most significant trading partner for St. Vincent and the Grenadines in terms of imports after the United States of America. I'll give you a little data. We import, I'm going to try to talk in TT dollars as much as possible. I don't know how many people are doing the conversions in their head. But we imported last year 3.1 billion TT dollars worth of goods. I'm not talking about services here now. And Trinidad and Tobago, as Okolo said, was responsible for 8.8% of those imports, which is 271 million TT dollars. that places you at number 2 on our list. We imported more goods from Trinidad and Tobago than we did from the United Kingdom, from China, from Japan, from any other country in Europe. Indeed, we imported more goods from Trinidad and Tobago than we did from the European Union writ large. You're important to us. But at 8.8% of total imports, you're second to the United States, but the United States has 41% of our imports. And a lot of the goods that are imported from the United States are available in quantity, in quality, in Trinidad and Tobago. And we believe that there is more we can do. And we certainly would be more pleased, for a variety of reasons, to be importing greater goods, greater proportion of our goods from Trinidad and Tobago than we do. And even better if we can make inroads into the dominance and our over-reliance on the United States as a market for imports, particularly as the political tide shift in the United States and America first becomes a priority. We don't know for certain what that means for the trading arrangements in the Caribbean, and we're always safer with partners that we know and trust. And we believe that we know and trust our friends in Trinidad and Tobago. But notwithstanding, and this is where I want to reach out to our friends in the room here today. Notwithstanding your long-standing dominance as the number 1 Caribbean exporter to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm glad to hear that we're in your top 10 in terms of data as a destination. But notwithstanding that, we have noted, this is both borne out by data and anecdotally, a greater hunger from some other countries in the region to crack the St. Vincent and the Grenadines market than there is a desire among the Trinidad and Tobago exporters to increase their share of the market in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So in recent years, we've had a great deal of activity, and activity is now translating into dollars and cents, from trading partners and investors in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Latin America, that seem much hungrier to get a slice of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines market than the commensurate level of interest in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're hoping that you don't rest on your laurels going forward, because we believe that there are other countries that are eager to do business with us and to get a larger share of that 3.1 billion TT dollars. I'll give you an example. We were struck by a hurricane. We have 2 billion TT dollars worth of damage. And the first 5 construction companies to contact us were from Jamaica. So we are buying, as we speak, over $20 million US in building materials and supplies from Jamaican suppliers of products that we know are available in Trinidad and Tobago. But the vigor with which they reached out and their willingness to structure deals that are favorable to both sides was far more aggressive from other locations than from Trinidad and Tobago. And we feel that, without slighting in any way our Jamaican brothers and sisters and our Bajan brothers and sisters, we feel that the natural home for that trade, for reasons of proximity, reasons of history, reasons of connectivity. We have cargo boats that go between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad on a weekly basis. The natural home for that trade should have been Trinidad and Tobago. And we believe that the natural home for our continued reconstruction is Trinidad and Tobago. And it takes a lot of money to repair and replace a $2 billion damage to our infrastructure and our economy. And we believe that Trinidad and Tobago has a role to play, a profitable role to play, in helping us to rebuild ourselves. economy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been performing well in recent years. If we go from COVID forward, the country in the Caribbean that had the smallest impact, we all had a negative blow in terms of economic activity during the pandemic. But the country with the smallest contraction was St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For a variety of reasons. I hear all it closed down for a while in Trinidad. We didn't quite do that. But we had the smallest contraction. We were the first country in the region to return to pre-pandemic levels of growth. And outside of Guyana, which is an outlier, in the years 2021, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has had the largest stretch and the greatest GDP growth over that period of all our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And that translates in many ways to an increased and a growing middle class with an increased appetite for goods and services that are available in Trinidad and Tobago. And that growth is projected to continue, notwithstanding the natural disaster setbacks that we've experienced. It's built in many ways at this point on the disaster recovery. We're going to have to spend a lot of money to rebuild homes and infrastructure. It's built on growing tourism. Our trade expert was saying that Trinidad products are not just available to the 110,000 citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but to the tourists who come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That number of tourists is now in excess of 400,000 people and growing now at a clip of about 20% a year. That is a market for Trinidad and Tobago. The mass housing reconstruction project that has to go on, the improvements in hotel construction, the government itself is investing in the construction of hotels. Tony talked about the increase in aircraft and airlift coming to the country. In the rebound in agriculture and fisheries, this is also a critical component of our economic rebound and a critical component of export opportunities for members of the TTMA. We're trying to rebuild a decimated sector that was affected by a volcano, a hurricane, a drought, and actually a second hurricane. And there's tremendous state investment and tremendous investment by the agricultural sector in helping that sector rebound. And of course, in construction, in roads and schools and police stations and cultural centers, the forecast for economic growth built on construction, hospitality, and agriculture is very robust in the near term. And I think there are advantages built in each one of those sectors that the TTMA can take advantage of. Two speakers now have mentioned the construction of a port. The construction could not come at a better time because the hurricane destroyed our existing port. So we didn't know that when we started, but now we can't wait for the new port to be completed. But we're replacing an antiquated 60-year-old port with a modern port that we believe will improve. I hear there are logistics people in the room here today. It's going to improve our ability to facilitate imports, our speed and quality of exports, our ability to position ourselves as an entry point to the Eastern Caribbean from a logistics standpoint and for a transshipment standpoint, and as a trade facilitating device. I think that when we talk about the trade in goods in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we're going to be talking about pre-port and post-port, what obtained before the new port was built and what obtains afterwards. And I think that those of you who are interested in both shipping into St. Vincent and the Grenadines and taking advantage of access to the wider Eastern Caribbean currency union market, you should take a real look at the opportunities inherent in a new modern port that can facilitate this type of trade regionally. And I think that's something we need to look at. The government is also very much invested in ICT and in using ICT, using communication technology to simplify and accelerate the doing business process. And the way that we have structured our IT, and Okola mentioned some of it, there's not going to be a need for you as a business person to get on a plane and come to Trinidad and come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to do business. We're going to completely revolutionize the way in which you ship things, clear things, pay for items, pay your taxes and all the rest of it. And you could sit in your bedroom in Trinidad and do a lot of the work that we expect business people have to do here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I want to believe that by 2025, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, by the end of 2025, St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be the most wired country in terms of facilitating business. And it will make a big difference for those exporters and business people that are willing to embrace technology and do business digitally. We will be open for business digitally. The digital storefront, that is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, will be open by the end of 2025. And you can do business with us from Arima. We want you to understand that philosophically and culturally, we see Trinidad and Tobago as the place where we naturally want to do business. And that is one hurdle that none of you will have to overcome in doing business in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Why do it with Trinidad and Tobago? Why do it with a Trini company? That hurdle has been crossed by your forebearers. We want to do business with you. And we want you to take us seriously as a market. And if you only have 8% of a $3 billion market, you realize that there's a lot of room for growth here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines among all of your businesses. And sometimes we feel that there are one or two entities, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but globally, that take small markets a little bit for granted. But I think that in a $3 billion space, there's a lot of money to be made by a lot of businesses. And I want you to look into that. You have, sir, well, I don't want to mention brands critically here today, but I was going to talk about a particular supermarket that operates in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that doesn't seem to be as attractive in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as it is in other countries, as a product of, I believe, taking the market for granted. But I think with the growth, with the opportunities, and with the interest in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a lot of money to be made by a lot of people. The issue of reciprocal trade is important. We obviously don't want to just continue importing. Everybody has mentioned that there are important exports, particularly in the agricultural space, and we want to narrow our trading deficit with Trinidad and Tobago, but we understand that there always will be a trading deficit with Trinidad and Tobago, given your expertise, particularly in fuels and hydrocarbons. But we think that there is ample opportunity for continued trade, for continued knowledge transfer between the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and their brothers and sisters in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to remove obstacles to trade. And our government set up something called a Doing Business Unit, which operates out of my ministry, whose specific job is to identify the roadblocks that you were discussing. Some of them are CARICOM-wide, we can't fix those. But the ones that are local in nature, our Doing Business Unit is set up specifically to identify and help businesses overcome some of the impediments to trade with either blanket legislative corrections or sometimes bespoke, tailored responses to things that might be identified by this or that business person that we haven't thought of. I encourage you to speak to Invest SVG, to speak to my ministry. Our Doing Business Unit is here to make your business simplified as possible in the trading relationships that you want to have and the business relationships you want to have. And we will bend over backwards to facilitate efficient trade between our two countries. And A challenge that you have to help us with is the one that Akolo mentioned, the issue of currency and foreign exchange. We imported 108 million EC dollars, about close to 300 million TT dollars in goods from Trinidad and Tobago last year. And we paid for almost all of it in US dollars. And we have done a paltry amount of trade, less than 1/10 of that, in exports to Trinidad and Tobago. But we can't get US dollars back for that. We can't even get EC dollars back for that. And it is an impediment not only to the trading process, but it is an impediment to the building of future business relationships. And it's something that I know our prime ministers have spoken about. I've spoken to Minister Paula as well about this challenge, but it is something that we have to resolve. We buy our oil in US, we buy our fruta in US, we buy our manufactured goods in US. If you send us a microphone stand, we'll pay US for it. We pay our University of the West Indies students tuition in US, which is not captured in our trading arrangements. But if somebody goes down with 2 sacks of potatoes, sweet potatoes, they can only leave with TT. And it's a problem. It's a problem in the trading relationship and something that I believe your influence can help to address on the other side of the equation. This is a tremendously important engagement, and I want to thank the MMTA for being here. But I want to believe that this is the beginning of an ongoing and sustained relationship with the market that is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We want your products. We recognize the quality of your products. We appreciate the brand that is Trinidad and Tobago for manufactured goods and beyond oil exports. And we think that there's money for you to make here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We imported in TT dollars $650 million of manufactured goods last year. Less than 5% of that is from Trinidad and Tobago. We imported 101 million TT dollars in beverages, 700 million TT dollars in food, 256 million TT dollars in chemicals, 695 million TT dollars in machinery. And in all of those numbers, the exports from Trinidad and Tobago, I believe, was severely underrepresented and could be much better. When you add fuel, everything skews northwards. But we believe that in each of those areas, your food, your beverages, your chemicals, your manufactured goods, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is open to you and willing to trade with you. I hope you got that vibe from the business people that you met with. And I hope that I can assure you from the perspective of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines that we will be here to facilitate you in any way possible. We would much rather see a Trini business person here doing business with us than someone from further afield. So please come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Come again, do business with us, and make money here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Camilo Gonsalves. I think in his speech there were many points that is a call to action and challenges for the 21 businesses represented here and those who are part of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association who are not here. So I don't need to repeat or summarize what the minister highlighted in terms of the opportunities that exist for you to sell us more stuff, which means that we'll buy less from the markets that are competing with you. the exporters that are competing with you. Also, for our local businesses, and we have a few in the room, you'll meet more at the networking cocktail, I hope. The opportunities to facilitate you with your exports and also our reciprocal trading with you. But not just that, the spin-offs that our business people can get from being your business partner. I think that's tremendous opportunity, especially for our emerging entrepreneurial sector. And as the minister alluded to, he spoke about the growing middle class. But I also like to say that out of that is a growing business class. And we're seeing the evolution of people who hitherto may go into the employment arena and get employed with the government service or some big private sector conglomerate. More and more, we're seeing university graduates, people who are tertiary trained, thinking about business, thinking about, not just thinking about it, doing it. And that's how I think the whole status quo changes from just big blocks of families that dominate the business arena to a more equitable spread. And the Chamber of Commerce in St. Vincent actively works towards that equitable spread in the ownership class. So, thank you very much again, Minister. I know you have to run back to Cabinet. I hope they didn't pass anything without your without your sanctioning me. But thank you for taking the time. Oh yes, you can do that. Yes, there's a small token. Yes. Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay. You want to? Yeah. Okay. So, Minister, you're going to be gifted.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Minister. Thank you. So we're going to set up 3 presentations. These are going to address various aspects of doing business. I think Mr. Currency wants to come before you, Ezra. So I'm going to just jump the order a bit. So we'll take Rommel Currency first. Rommel is going to address areas around Article 164 and some other pertinent matters. So we'll just set up for that presentation.
Let me just make sure the presentation is set up before I begin. Good afternoon. I think protocol has been established, so I won't bother to go through that at all. But I do want to give you guys my welcome, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think we are one family. We know this song from Skinny Fabulous, Spongy Garling, Marshall Montano, one family. So I feel at home speaking to you. Plus, West Indies just lost to Sri Lanka. Not the best day, but they didn't say Trinidad and Tobago, they said West Indies. So I'm going to ask you permission to speak to you in a kind of colloquial manner. I hope it's quite fine. And during my presentation, I hope, at the end of my presentation, I hope that you will realize that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, like the others would have said before, is open for business. We try as much as possible to facilitate business in a quick and easy way. That is what we want. Right? My presentation is going to be not too long. Short. I try to take away all the noise by just putting a little just a few words so that everybody is focused on what I'm saying. All right, now, there's the heading there. I couldn't come up with a more creative one, but I thought that was fitting, so I hope that's okay. You can go to the first slide. Now, this is what I'm going to focus on, right? Because I'm from the Department of Local Trade. We're also responsible for consumer affairs, but my presentation is going to focus on the local aspect, the local trade of it. We are in charge of the import and export regulations. All right, I'll speak a little bit about that. I'll also speak a little bit about Article 164. I think most of you would be familiar with Article 164. So hopefully I'll be able to go through that part pretty quickly. And finally, I'll speak just a little bit about price control, right? In between, I'll hopefully talk a little bit about Bureau of Standards, although I know Ledger is here and Ledger will speak to that in a more detailed way. But the reason why I mentioned that is because our department, we're not just a local trade, we are local trade, but we try as much as possible to work with other departments. We try to facilitate business, like I said before, as much as possible. So without further ado, there we go. The import and export regulations, right? Very simple. Importation of any goods listed in the first schedule, and I'm going to show you what the first schedule is prohibited from any place outside of the OECS and Belize, and they may only be imported if a license is obtained from the Ministry of Trade. Secondly, the importation of goods listed in the second schedule is prohibited from any place outside the CARICOM. They may only be imported if a license is obtained from the Ministry of Trade. And finally, the exportation of any goods listed in the third schedule is prohibited except under license from the Comptroller of Supply. So basically, if a person, a business wants to import goods that are listed in the first schedule, if those goods originate from any place within the OECS, no license is required. Outside of the OECS, a license is required, and these goods are listed in Schedule 2. So in your case, the most important schedule you can think about is Schedule 2. All right? We got that clear? But it's good. Sure. They are similar. Well, some of them match. Some of them do match. But you'll see it, because I'll show you the list of Article 164 goods, and I'll show you the list of Schedule 1 goods. Remember with Article 164, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, there's well, I can't tell you the exact number, but in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we haven't yet enacted the full list of Article 164 goods. Right? I'll make that distinction during the presentation. And I hope I'll be able to answer your questions. Yeah, we'll see. We have a caller to help me out and a couple others. Yeah, who can help me out. Now, this is the first schedule, and immediately you'll notice some of these goods are on Article 164. Flour, correct. So, any of these goods coming from the OECS, no license. But if they are coming from CARICOM, the other countries besides OECS and Belize, they require a license. You can get... So let's deal with flour, for example. It's in 164. It's also listed here. It's also listed here. So someone could get a ministerial license to bring it in all over. Correct. No. There's a kicker. Remember, it's an Article 164 item. Right? Article 164 items attract an import tariff. Right? So you'll see what the import tariff is. But the underlying point is this, right? And I harped on it when I began talking. Import licenses, you come to our department, even though we allocate 2 days for it, you can come 10 minutes before. 10 minutes before, our officers would accommodate you. You can make a phone call 5 minutes before, say, hey, you're coming, I want this license done. We'll stick around and get it done for you. That's how important we see it. So these are the lists. And this can be provided to you via email at any time for sure. Right? So this is the first schedule. Second schedule, a long list. Second schedule is a long list. I tried to group them together because to go through all of them would have been problematic. I don't know if you need a little bit of time because I think it's about 4 schedules, 4 slides that depict the list of goods and are within the second schedule. Right, so I'll leave this just for a little bit, digest it for a little bit, and then we'll move on to see what the other goods are. All right? Think we can have some fast readers here, man. Right? Salmon, trout. And import licenses, I should have mentioned, require just $5. 5 you see, small cheese. Small cheese. You know what I mean? Can almost get a 3 for 10. All right. Or for 5. All right? So, again, T-shirts, plastic tubing. Yeah, just to be clear, go ahead. No, it's not a waiver at all. It's not a waiver at all. Yeah. Yeah. Correct. And it's not in any way inhibitive, like I just mentioned before. You can come 10 minutes. It's merely us taking note of it, documenting it, and you get it automatically, basically. Overproof rum, eh? Right, so this is an example of the import licenses because some goods that are part of the second schedule have to be sent to the Ministry of Agriculture first and foremost. All right, meat products, typical things, fish products, you send it to Ministry of Fisheries, they deal with that. They say, okay, well, it's good, they come to us, we sign off. And that process in itself is not onerous in any way. They're very accommodating just as our department is. So there's nothing to worry about whatsoever. Next slide. And this is how simple it is. This is the application for import license. You just say what the item is, say what the quantity and the estimated value. Basically, tick, and then you're good to go. All right? Next. The third schedule has to do with exportation, right? A license required to export lobsters, kongs. To export lobsters, you pay $1 a pound, not much. To export kongs, you pay 50 cents a pound. We also apply a license to export scrap metals and copper. And that, for every shipment, you pay $300. Small price, again. And this is an example of the export license form. All right? So we can skip ahead nicely. Article 164, like I believe most of you would know about Article 164, but for those of you who may not remember, Article 164 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas is designed to promote the development of industries in the lesser developed countries of CARICOM, including Belize and Haiti. These countries are allowed to deny certain products originating in CARICOM and extra-regional countries from preferential duty-free entry into their markets. Importantly, the CARICOM Secretariat on the 29th of July 2024 advised members of an extension of the suspension of community origin and increase in the tariff rates for the list of products below for 5 or 10 years. All right, so I'm going to show you what the list is. This list, right, this specific one is what we have in St. Vincent, what we have enacted within our legislation. No, just go back. Right? So this is what we have, 70% MDCs, 100% for countries outside of the MDCs. Typical thing, beer, stout, and so forth. And of course, you know the reason why we have decided to, why the government decided to just implement this part of Article 164. We haven't yet gotten to the entire list. I don't know, I don't want to speak for the government, but this is what we have done so far. We haven't implemented these, so if somebody were to import these items in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they won't attract a tariff coming from the NDCs, because we have not yet enacted it within our laws. Which? Well, as far as I know, it's within it's part of the act. It's part of the legislation. But if a waiver, well, there's a provision for you to apply for that within cabinet. But at the end of the day, that decision would have to come from cabinet. Yeah. I didn't get that. No, pass is not part of the legislation. No. Well, under the customs, if you go on the customs site and you download the legislation, PASTA was not on it. Yeah. Yeah. You can clarify that. All right. Right. Price control, I think we do have price control in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's not a long list. You can see motor vehicles, LPG, white gases, the typical stuff, right? But we in the department, we don't necessarily go around to every store, every department to say, hey, X, Y, Z, you need to drop this and so forth, right? Because natural demand and supply takes care of that. We don't ordinarily find businesses going against the law when it comes to price control. So that's not really an issue for us. All right? So I think this is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to listen and try my best to answer. Yeah, man, sure. One family.
I think most of the presenters would stick around for the little reception we're having after, so you can use that opportunity as well to, if you think of a question. We're going to invite Mr. Ezra Ledger now, who is the Executive Director of the Bureau of Standards, to give you his presentation on things like sanitary and phytosanitary. There you go. It's not my jargon, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're doing well, and I will try not to give any information overload, but nonetheless, to present some information relative to the Bureau of Standards in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I do have a presentation, but I'll have to skip about two dozen of the slides that I have on it because there's a lot of slides. But just want to preface what I'm going to say, indicating that the Bureau of Standard operation here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is very similar to the TTBS. So our operations are very similar. The only distinction between us is that the Bureau of Standards in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have jurisdiction for everything: goods, services, process, and practices, including food. But Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards doesn't have a food because the food and chemistry, chemistry and food and drug have responsible food. So that's the only distinction. Nonetheless, we have other similarities. As I said, recently we were all part of a regional body, the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standard and Quality CROSSCU. That was set up under Article 67 of the Treaty of Chaturama. So obviously there's a similarity. That treaty of establishing the Caribbean community was done in Trinidad and Tobago, and the first meeting of the CROSSCU was held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So obviously that is something that is useful towards trade relationship. And just recently, St. Vincent and the Grenadines became the chair of CROSSCU, and Trinidad and Tobago is the vice chair. So there's really good synergy for us to have better relationships over trade. So we have seen that there's a pathway to encourage trade relationship. Right? did give a slide. It's coming up. I did present the slides. I don't know if it's the same computer. If not, I'll have to do something. Right. So, obviously, as I mentioned before, we have international standards. So, relative to, we adhere to what we call the Annex 3 of the World Trade Organization TBT agreement. This agreement recommends that we adopt standards, across the board using transparency and consensus driven. And as much as possible, once you want to fulfill a legitimate objective, what we need to do is to use international standards where they exist. So St. Vincent and Grenadines, in most cases, what we try to do is to harmonize our requirement for standards based on what exists internationally. So I really wanted to show a slide in terms of the hierarchy. It's not, should I save it on the desktop? Yeah. I don't know if it's on the desktop there. Right. So obviously, at the moment, we have basically 150 national standards declared. So most of these standards are, no, we're not, the standards are voluntary by nature. But then, according to the WTO agreement, and naturally in our jurisdiction, just like Trinidad and Tobago, because we're part of the British Commonwealth, we still use what they call compulsion mandatory standard. In Europe and other jurisdictions, they use what they call technical regulation. But the objective of a mandatory standard and a technical regulation is basically the same. If you want to protect health, you want to avoid competition, and so on, obviously, these are some of the reasons we can declare the standards. So we can just bypass a lot of these slides. I just wanted to show some. This presentation could be mailed to you, so let's move on from there. Let's proceed. Go ahead. Next slide. Go. Next. All right, so we have a pointer. Well, they're from the Manufacturers Association, so they should have a lot of stuff, And I think Trinidad is a few levels ahead of us in terms of technology. All right, so this is just a copy of our national standards, and this standard here is an overarching standard that we use for labeling requirement. So naturally, we have a 3-tier standard for labeling of prepackaged goods. So the general standard, there's one for prepackaged food, and there's prepackaged good. So all goods entering St. Vincent and Grenadines must comply with this standard. And of course, this standard is not a Vincentian standard. It's a standard that has been adopted from the international community, and it's harmonized within the region. So naturally, this standard for prepackaged food will be the same standard that the Food and Drug will have in Trinidad and Tobago. And then when you have the similar standard for the prepackaged goods, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standard will have that standard as well. So what we try to do is to harmonize, because part of the harmonization is what you mentioned in your remarks. What we're trying to do is to eliminate technical barriers to trade. And naturally realize that in many cases, and the minister spoke many times about, and we happen with the many ministers, we always talk about trade facilitation and globalization and so on like that. And all these countries, they give us what? Access. They say you have access to the market, but guess what? You can't enter. There's no entry, because what they do, they put standards and what is going to be TBT or SPS so as to prevent entry. And that's what we try to do in terms of standards. We make our standards applicable, targeted, and to fulfill objectives. So as I said, in order to do that, we use international standards. So therefore, the standard developed by our international counterparts, they're harmonized so that whatever is recommended in Trinidad and Tobago or Barbados or Jamaica, then naturally that's what we required here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. So that's why we realize that we're going to have a whole list of standards, because sometimes developing standards take a lot of resources. And therefore, if an exporting country have a standard for cement, we might not necessarily accept a standard for cement, because obviously, if the exporting country has it, we believe in what you call the ISO some years ago have come up with a term: one standard, one test, accepted everywhere. So, for instance, if we are importing cement out of Trinidad and Tobago, if an independent third party provide verification, either test report or conformity assessment report, along with your shipment, or even if it is sent subsequently with that product, then we'll accept that once it's from independent third party and the standard used is international, right? So I really wanted to show, it's here, sorry. Oh, so this is the, yeah, when you asked the question before, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Now I need to go back to the question that asked about monetary standards. So, but yes, this one. So obviously, the standard we do not have out of all of our 150 standards. We basically have 5 monetary standards, and that is why you notice we're not trying to create any technical barriers to trade. We have 5. The fact is that what we do sometimes is to create de facto monetary. That is, you don't have to create legislative burden by making the standard compulsory. What could happen if the legitimate objective is one of these, to protect the consumer against danger, to health or safety, prevent deceptive practices. So we have labeling standards to ensure quality of goods for export or home use, because we have seen that many times that persons have on the product for export use only, and therefore what happens, they give a lower quality product for the export market, and that product is not the same quality as what is in the national jurisdiction. So in order to avoid that situation, we make the standards compulsory, that whatever is the level of standard you apply in your country, that should be the product used for export. And of course, the other issues in terms of provide additional information, the quality, and of course, with all this issue of environment. So once these are some of the targeted, then the standard could become a compulsory standard. But as I said before, in many legislation, so if a particular ministry in their registration or licensing program wants to cite a standard, then they become what they call de facto monetary, because you must comply with that condition. So for instance, some of the Hotel and Tourism Association, we have standards for them. Of course, for you to be registered with the Hotel and Tourism Association, you must comply with the national standards, and therefore, so that becomes a de facto requirement. So we have many standards that other agencies use for that particular purpose. All right, so I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, you can. Let me see. No, that. Okay, so just to give an idea, is that as I said, we adopt. So we have 2 processes of getting our standards. We can adopt, which is with the O, meaning that we just take it wholesale. So if there's a standard in Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of our standards were taken from Trinidad and Tobago. Our 4 set of standards when we were developing were from Trinidad and Tobago. So basically, we just take that standard, ask for permission from the Trinidad and Tobago standard, change the cover, and just use that as our standards. And that became our national standard. In the case of adoption, where with the A, what we normally do is that there are many times that we have these international or regional standards, and therefore we'll establish technical committees to just review to ensure that the requirements, whether geographical or otherwise, meet a requirement. And once we make a technical change to that standard, it is adopted as ours. So generally, these are the international bodies and regional bodies from which we use our standards. So the first one is the regional standard, which is the CROSQ. Then we have extra regional. So this will be the CARICOM countries plus Latin America. So those are called COPAN, Pan American Commission for Standards and Technical Regulation. Then we have the big boys, which will be ISO. So they provide a lot of non-food standards. Then all of the food standards. So within the WTO agreement, the Codex Alimentarius Commission is cited as a competent authority for food standards. So whenever we adopt these standards, it means that these standards are very similar to what exists in Europe or other part of the world, because they are cited as international standards. So the majority of our food standards are from the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Also, we have the ASTM. Most of you in Trinidad and the steel and the cement and a lot of construction material, they are certified with ASTM. So ASTM has been offering a lot of their standards for free because they really want to internationalize their standard, but because they've been used significantly across the world, we use their standard of adoption. The IEC, we have not done a lot of the International Electrotechnical Commission standards. They are electrical standards, but nonetheless, they are cited. We recently did an MOU with the UL, and this is important because we see a lot of fraud happening, especially in a lot of domestic electrical appliances. The UL mark is basically the symbol that the product would have met the mark and of course have all of the adherent characteristics. And many people, when you see that mark, it's a mark of really confidence and compliance. But there's a lot of fraud in that companies just put a UL on their product, and therefore we have established an MOU recently with the UL company so that we can do traceability. So if a product comes in with that mark, obviously we can just enter that code and to verify that it's a legitimate product, right? So we have had that. And of course, as I mentioned before, we adopt standards from a lot of other agencies within the region. All right, so I just want to mention this. This is a kind of hierarchy which could affect trade. And many times we have these situations where, as much as possible in our trade, we should always try to adopt the highest level of standard, right? Put that down. We should, as much as possible, adopt the highest level of standard, because that is where, so harmonization, a measure that the higher you go on this level, the greater the acceptance of the standard internationally. So while we may have individual standards, like those that are particular for a singular company, then you have the sectoral standards. So a lot of the conglomerates, you might find a few hotel chain or a few supermarket chain, they come up with their requirement. It happened a lot in UK and other places where just those particular supermarkets just establish what are their conditions for their fresh produce and other goods. Then you have the industrial standards. So you have the standards that, let's say, the cement or the steel industry will have, and they will promote those as their best practices. Then you have the national standards, the sub-regional standards, of course the extra-regional standard. I mentioned that those, so the regional standard here will be those of CrossQ. The extra-regional will be those of the COPAN, which I mentioned, other agencies. And of course, so even within Europe, they have the CEN, right, with the European standardization body. They are regional standard bodies. And then we have what we call the international with a common I, and international with of course, the capital I. We, as much as possible, we try our best to use the international standards, because an international standard is one that's been prepared by an international body that is open to all members of United Nations. And that is fundamental. It is fundamental because you have a lot of international organizations, some of them that produce standards like the Global Gap. They're not produced by international bodies, but they become a standard. They've been requesting for us to use those standards, but they're not open to all members. They're not free for us to join. Okay, so therefore we have a lot of the other, like the OECD, this organization of, right, that in Europe, that blacklists the persons based on their standard, but they're not open systems, and therefore they're not truly international body. So what we try to do is to ensure that all of our standards are adopted from the international bodies that we can have membership in, because it's really unfair to us to participate or to adopt a standard that we did not participate in. We just don't want to be only standard takers. We want to participate in the development of these standards to ensure that it meets some of our requirements, because many times the requirements of the global gap, which is the good agricultural practices, when I look at those standards, we in St. Vincent and Grenadines, we can never meet those requirements of those standards, because the environmental conditions, the geographical conditions, and all of the economic conditions, they're just not suited for us. They can do mechanized farming. We can hardly do mechanized farming in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Most of our farms are probably close to our homes, and therefore a lot of the things that require those standards will be very prohibitive for us to really implement in our jurisdiction. So this is quite important for us in dealing with standards. So because if there's a trade dispute, the WTO that handles the trade dispute will use international standards as the benchmark. So that is why it's better for us. I don't think that the Ministry of Finance or Trade has enough money to settle a dispute that will last over 5 years when it comes to trade dispute. Okay, so that is quite important. So I just want to give a small example of this, right? And I normally give this story about Belize and Jamaica. There was a trade dispute for red kidney beans. I know most of you in the system might have heard about it before. And there was a prohibition from some of the countries of red kidney beans into their jurisdiction. There was a standard for it. And obviously the persons importing the kidney bean from Belize was said that the kidney beans were not red. But then again, so we have to commission a whole scientific study Because red kidney beans, of course, it is is the name for the red kidney bean, but naturally, the standard didn't take into consideration the color scheme. And the color of the red kidney bean is dependent on the soil type and the condition in different countries. And therefore, we basically have to work along, develop a standard to say, okay, yes, it's not it's the name of the bean is red kidney beans, but we can't really imply it in a standard that it has to be red. You know, so we have to basically make this standard in such a way that it can fulfill the objective and not necessary. But these things are what we call trade, technical barriers to trade. It happens many times before. I know we had addressed a lot of complaint in terms of where the date mark should be on a bottle of malt. You know, some people want it here and you put it there, and by the time you put it there, they say, okay, could you change the color? Because persons used, and that's why I want to standardize all these requirements. So at the end of the day, you know, it will not create any problems in terms of trade. So, could you hit enter for me, please? Got this. Right. So, as I said, we have most of these areas are covered by us with the standard. So, in the case where we do not have any standard, right? So, this is quite important. In the next slide, please. Right. So, in the case that we do not have national standards, because as I said, we do not try to reinvent the wheel. So in the case where we don't have a standard for a particular community or goods or service, then we always use the international standards as a benchmark. Okay, so that's important. We use international standards as a benchmark for commodities that are not listed on our national list. And many times, if the exporting countries or the country from which we're importing, they have that particular standard. Once they have adopted that standard from an international standard body, then we'll accept that standard as the requirement for our jurisdiction as well. All right? So we do not, as I said, we do not try to reinvent the wheel or create an additional burden. And this is what we are promoting within the CARICOM member state. All right? Next slide, please. And of course, I mentioned about this one standard, one test, accepted everywhere. And I hope and trust that Trinidad will do that as well. One standard, accepted everywhere. All right? Next slide. Right, so this is basically to show our interaction with the international world. We have our value chain, which will be the goods and services. Then we have that whole quality infrastructure. So there's a quality infrastructure that most countries have. In largest jurisdiction, the quality infrastructure is spread across different agencies. So in America, you'll have the ANSI, which is American Standard Body, then you have the ASTM, then you have the National Institute for Science and Technology that do metrology. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because of our demands, we basically just have our quality infrastructure is housed in one place. So it's standards, quality assurance, metrology, which fulfill its organization. And all of these organizations, we have relationship with international bodies. So it's not that like we are standing on our own. There's always a correlation with an international body that will validate or from which will give us some level of authority in carrying out our responsibilities as standardizers, all right? Next slides, which should be my last slide. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments or any curiosity that they might want to share. Oh, oh yes. That was a contention a while ago. So that will be useful. Yeah. Right. Any other contributions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have one more presentation from Mrs. Juliet, Invest SVG. You're set up on the laptop already, or you? Okay. So as she makes her way, just by way of recognizing some other people in the room, it's important for the networking cocktail after, so you'll know who's here. We have the president of Bar Association here. We have somebody from FSA. Forgive me if I'm not instantly recognizing everybody. We have Ms. Desiree Richards in the room, who is a serial investor and business person, representing many different businesses across different sectors. She'll be a useful person. Some of the other people in the room you've already met in the B2Bs, Harry Gibson, we have Massey, we have, I mentioned the CEO of AIA. She's also here. And during the cocktail session, I will walk around and make introductions, people who haven't mentioned. Okay? Come, Nadine.
Good afternoon, everyone. I recognize some faces from when I went to Trinidad for TIC. I already said hello to Jonathan, who I regrettably recognized as Anthony, but we'll let that slide. Yeah, because you were right behind my booth. You can't forget me. Okay, so now that you've met everyone you've met our minister, who has welcomed you with open arms. We consider Trinidad basically Vincentian, you know, that's basically how we look at you. You've met our Mr. Currency, who's told you what to expect from exports and imports in terms of regulations. And you've spoken with Mr. Ledger, who's told you what standards to expect. So I'm Nadine Julera, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Invest SVG does for when you come here to invest with us. So Shana, if you could. So basic stuff, mission, we promote investment, and my particular arm of Invest SVG is the marketing of exports, marketing and promotion of exports. So that the red one's basically me, and then our vision and our core values. Next one, please. These are our key services. Just to give you a little idea of who we are, we're not very dissimilar from Invest TT. Next one. And then these are our priority sectors. Not that we wouldn't take anything outside. Like, for instance, if we discover gas tomorrow, gas can be the first one up, oil can be the first one up there. So these are what we focus on. These are what we're mandated to push externally. Because export is near and dear to my heart, I'll give you a little bit about agriculture and agro-processing and other little bits of the manufacturing part. Our minister and our director of trade would have told you about our exports between countries. But there's a little bit of a challenge for you. Not this one, the one following it. Did you know that St. Vincent imports $1.2 billion worth of oil and gas products every year? $1.2 billion, that's a lot of money for a small economy. And then what actually surprised me a whole lot was cheese. Vincentians eat a lot of cheese. We import $10 million worth of cheese every year. We are not lactose intolerant people. So by way of challenge, what I want to say to you is, do you know that St. Vincent exports cattle? We do. We export cattle and small ruminants. But we import in $10 million worth of cheese. So it's easy. So if you have looked about, you can't help but look behind us. We're rather pretty. We have lots of plants, lots of trees. We grow a lot of vegetables. I understand a lot of our vegetables come to you. We have lots of stuff to feed cattle. So we extend a little challenge for you. We have space. We have industrial parks. We can tolerate a cheese factory because it would cut down on our import bill. And you know, there's room for it. There's room for it. Another thing that we export a lot of, $14 million worth of, is chicken wings. We import a lot of chicken wings. These are things I find that we could actually grow at home. We don't need to be bringing all this stuff in. We genuinely don't. But I just throw that out. I'm begging your pardon? You need one chicken? Yeah, but if we wouldn't want to eat those, though, because those be GMOs, you know. Shana, next slide for me. So these are some of the things that we're currently working on and some of the things we've done. We are in the process of doing our night market event, which is taking the place of the Everything Vinci event. It's a considerably more condensed version of Everything Vinci. But we invite you guys to come by if you have time. It begins on Saturday at 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then again, which on Sunday, the 27th, which is our Independence Day, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. There are a lot of events going on. It's being held at our cruise ship terminal, but it'll give you a little slice of what everything Vinci Expo itself will be. And we anticipate that it's going to be considerably larger than when China came last time, because we had invited Guyana, but going forward, we have 7 countries coming, and that would be inclusive of Taiwan. So we look forward to seeing everyone here. Remember you. And yeah, everything Vinci is going to be a lot larger. One of the things we want to work on more with our Grenadine Islands, especially since they've been so severely affected by the hurricane that passed, is a marina market. I'll just give you the concept. We want to invite more sales from our yacht traffic. We have a lot of yacht traffic, and we don't find that we capitalize on the fact that they come in, they get water, they do their laundry, they get rid of their trash. So they're actually leaving more than they're taking. They get rid of their trash, but they don't take very much. So we wanted to set up miniature markets on various islands. We do it here on mainland, of course, because there's a marina here. But we do it in Beckway, we do it in Union, and we'd advertise naturally, because there are newspapers that we can capitalize on, to invite more sales from those. And once we did a test and we realized how well it worked, we would naturally do it again. But that's what a marina market is. Next slide, please. These are our plans going forward. We are going to be developing our catalog of Vincentian products to make it easier for you to buy from us. Hosting more B2B meetings, and by that I mean that we would like to invite a marriage between our facilitation department, which is run by my colleague, Mrs. Shana Brown-Jacobs, and my department, Export, to marry my clients with her clients, to produce unique spa products where necessary. We have quite a few hotels in the Grenadines. I've actually put some in this presentation for you to see. Shameless plug for you to stay and come back and visit our Grenadine Islands. And more of that sort, more of those types of marriages between our foreign direct investors and our domestic investors. Next one, please. This is, I know these pictures are really horrible, but I had a really horrible camera at the time. So that's the scale of what it was last year. But you have to imagine it going even further down the runway. And I know this one looked like toys and so, but it's not. It's not. It's actually real. It's a drone shot. But it went much farther down. All right, so why look at us? Why look at St. Vincent for investment? Favorable trade agreements, which my colleague, Mrs. John Patrick, would have referred to. Fantastic incentives, which can be tailored to your product or your project. No foreign exchange limitations, 100% repatriation on funds. And enterprises can be owned entirely by foreign direct investors. We recognize that there are jurisdictions where 51% has to be owned by a local or other percentages, but in St. Vincent it's a little different. Next slide, please. Key partners. Some of you may already be familiar with Eastern Caribbean Group of Companies, ECGC. They manufacture, or they sell flowers, they sell rice. Vinci Fresh, we actually have some of their products in your gift bags today for you to experience. Tusty Water, Grenadine Well Sea Salt, which is a product made in our Grenadine island of Beckway. It's really, really, really good sea salt. For those of you who went to Trinidad, you may have come by the booth and sampled it. We associate well with CAIPA, which is the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. It's an umbrella body that looks after all of the Caribbean IPAs. Caribbean Export, we partner well with Sandals. A lot of our products are already in there. Mustique Company Limited, there's a supermarket on Mustique, which also carries a lot of our exporter products. Actually, government is a partner. Chamber is a partner. Mandarin Oriental is a partner, and so is Soho House. Next one, please. So these are just images. This is our sandals. It's not as big as other people's sandals, but it's very elegant. This is Mystique. I don't know how many of you heard of Mystique. That's Basil's Bar in the corner. That's just one house. That's Canawan, where Mandarin Oriental and Soho are. The owner really likes pink. Even the sugar is pink. And that's it for me. I didn't come to take up too much of your time because I think we've gone over.
So we're at the end of the presentations. I think there are going to be some small gift presentations at this point. We have, from the chamber, gift bags for every participant from your TTMA. So I don't know if you want to do that first. Huh? Okay. So I'm going to ask Madeleine and Shamil and Leah to come with the bags. And generally you might have to help here. You call out your party if they're all in the room. So one by one. Okay? We can do it over here. The bags are already here, right? Yes. Okay, so they'll take them when they go in. Okay, but we have two special ones though. So, come and do that. So we would like to present to the Director of Trade Facilitation, Ms. Suzanne Singh Sheraton. We just have Shamil will present you with a bag of goodies. It's been a pleasure having you. And the other one is for the CEO. Oh, they need a photo. So, okay. I think she'll have to come back for the photo. Yes. Yeah, you have to come back for the photo. Thank you. And I'm told the participants from TTMA will just collect their gift bag as we leave the room. So that's it from our side. You know.
So on our side, we would like to have some presentation to the director.
You want the mic?
No, my motive.
No, I think the camera is picking up.
To the Director of Trade.